Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's meeting of the General Purposes Committee of Alderman, being held today on Tuesday, the 15th of July 2025. As you're aware, the public element of today's meeting is now being live streamed, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. This recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting, where it shall be retained for up to 1 civic year. I'll hand over to Sir Charles to move our senior alderman, Sir Andrew, into the chair, please.
Yes. Item 1 then therefore is around election of a chair. Can I recommend, in order for that to happen, that we direct our senior alderman Andrew Palmley to the chair? Town Clerk.
Thank you, Sir Andrew. Beginning with item 1, apologies for absence have been received from Alderwoman Dame Susan Langley, Alderman Robert Howard and Alderman Tim Levine. We are also expecting the Lord Mayor to join us later in non-public session. Item 2, members' declarations under the Code of Conduct in respect of items on today's agenda. May I please ask if there are any? We move then to item 3, which is the annual election of a chair. In accordance with the Court of Alderman's Standing Orders number 11 and 12, this was advertised to those to the full court, and the only expression of interest received from those eligible to stand was Alderman Sir William Russell, who we therefore at this juncture reappoint to the chair for the ensuing year. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Moving swiftly on to our election of Deputy Chair, Sir William, again in accordance with the Court of Alderman's Standing Orders, this time numbers 14 and 16, we sought expressions of interest. The only expression of interest received from those eligible to stand being Alderman Sir Charles Bowman, who we therefore also reappoint into the position of Deputy Chair for the ensuing year. Thank you both. Moving to minutes, item 5 is to consider the minutes of our last meeting held on the 13th of May.
Is everyone comfortable with the minutes from the 13th of May? Agreed. Good. There's a few congratulatory notices here. First, Professor Michael Manelli has been awarded the Order Pro Merito Militensi and the Silver Order of Merit for the Knights of Malta. As if that weren't enough, he's also been selected to chair the International Students Task Force for the Chartered Association of Business Schools, launched back in May, and was recently awarded Honorary Freeman of the Worshipful Company of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators. Also to congratulate Alderman Robert Hughes Penny has been appointed chair of the City UK Business Council. I know Prem has had lots of congratulations about his CBE, but congratulations again, Prem. And also congratulations to Sir Nicholas Lyons, who was elected Master Merchant Tailor last night. So that's it, Town Clerk, I think.
Thank you, Chair. We move on to item 6, which is a report of the Executive Director for Innovation and Growth, setting out the quarterly report, which is for information and begins on page 11 of your agenda pack.
That's great. This was an output progress by Strategy Group 1 with its focus on external priorities, and will be more of a regular feature at GBC going forward, where they will receive the same report as P&R for information each quarter. So I'm looking at Damien. Damien is here. So Damien, welcome as always, and over to you, really. You don't have to stand in the court, this court.
Thank you very much. So the quarterly report hopefully speaks for itself in terms of the... Of course. So the quarterly report will speak for itself in terms of the sheer breadth and depth of the work that IG and indeed the wider departments across the corporation, because we always work extremely closely, whether it's with Mansion House, with Remembrancers, with comms. It very much is a collective effort on anything that we deliver. The forward-looking part is slightly tantalizing because we're just waiting for the full financial services strategy to come out. It's being announced in Leeds, I think, even as we speak, but we're waiting for all of the documents to come out. So obviously in public session, don't want to preempt anything that is going to be announced. But what has been extremely powerful over the last few weeks and months is the collaboration that we've had with Treasury as they've been thinking through something that indeed the corporation called for two years ago, a financial service strategy that would give us real clarity of direction and level of ambition over the next 5 to 10 years. That was something we called for 2 years ago. That is something that now government is bringing forward, and we're delighted about that. Obviously, we're waiting to see the full shape of it, but I think what has already been very evident is there's a real appetite for government to work with the industry. There's a very strong appetite for government to work with us. There are going to be a number of areas announced that we are going to be working closely with them, but one that was trailed over the weekend obviously was around the investment hub, the concierge service. That's going to be an incredibly important part going forward of ensuring that UK's financial services remains dynamic and extremely attractive globally. And that's important, obviously, for the square mile and for London, but really for the whole of the UK. But there will be other areas coming out as well around skills, around fintech. Don't want to preempt any of those. But the other thing to mention, obviously, is around the Mansion House Accord. That has been a really extraordinary achievement of the current Lord Mayor, building on the compact from 2 years ago, which was a huge step forward. And I think that these have the potential for directing flows of capital towards some of the incredibly important productive assets where we need to see higher levels flowing. And that importantly, it's not just the shifts in pension fund investment, it's also the signal it sends to the rest of the market, and indeed the link-ups that we can then make through the new investment hub so that you see international capital alongside domestic capital. For that to work, we also need employers to play their part, and you'll have seen the employers' pension pledge that was announced yesterday, be fully revealed today. That's critical part of the dynamic nature of the value chain, because the pension funds can pledge to do their work, but unless the employers are taking on the right kind of pension schemes that will be able to deploy capital with a potentially a slightly higher fee structure, but a much greater value for employees, we're not going to see those shifts into private markets. So the employer pension pledge, something quite new that we've done this time round. We've already got over 20 signatories, over 1 million employees as part of that. But we can see that going a lot further because it's good for pensions, it's good for employees, but it will also be excellent for investment into the UK.
Thank you, Damien. Damien, can I just say, can you pass on thanks to your team? I mean, reading this paper, it's extraordinary the amount that's just gone on in a quarter, and the hard work your team put in, I know, aligned very closely with the Mansion House, which we all appreciate. So thank you very much. Are there any questions for Damien? This is in public, remember. Damien will be around in private, but don't let that put you off. Simon.
Thanks, Chair, and yeah, thanks, Damon. I think it's a fantastic report. Really shows the breadth of what you're doing. It's really helpful to see what reports are coming out as well. So it's useful to have those kind of headlines and dates. So thank you for including those. And I would say I think the quality of the reports that your team produces is consistently very, very high. So congratulations.
Alex. and then Alison.
Damien, thank you. Page 20, paragraph 48 refers to a recruitment process beginning, and apologies if I missed it earlier in the document, but I just wonder if you'd clarify who that recruitment process is for. It's not clear from that section who that's for.
It's for the USMD.
For the
US managing director.
And is that referenced in this document? Because I couldn't see that in the paragraph before.
I think you may have picked up somewhere we have shortened the document, but it's something that has been.
Alex, it came to court as well and was approved in Court of Common Council with the hiring of an MD.
No, I remember that. I just couldn't remember what, because this didn't refer to anything, and it was a sort of something that had been edited out. So can I just clarify who the current staff in the US is at the moment?
So at the moment, there are no staff employed there. We're in the process at the moment of getting the recruiters in place, and then we will take this through as a member-led recruitment.
And do we have a physical office there at the moment?
We will do once we have a physical MD.
Thank you. Alison and then Robert.
One is also about staffing, so maybe we take that in the private session if we could. But the other point was, obviously this has been to PNR, and I just wondered, I'm not at PNR, I wondered whether any comments from PNR that would be relevant to us in terms of how they review it, and how they sort of challenge or applaud you.
Thank you. Interesting question. So it went for information, I believe, and papers for information are only discussed if members wish to raise a question. They didn't on this occasion.
Robert.
Thank you. Just echoing colleagues' appreciation for the paper and all your department does, Damien. Just taking it up to the sort of the levels of the strategy, perhaps building on Alison's question. We've had questions at Common Council and references to the changing nature of the conversation and the investment landscape with regard to ESG investing. And therefore the sort of paragraphs on sustainable finance. I'd just be interested to understand how that has flexed over the last 3 and 6 months, what changes you've seen developing in that space, and how you've sought to integrate those changes and align with new opportunities as they're emerging. And I'd secondly ask the same question about, and make the same reference to Common Council, about the whole sort of security, defence, resilience piece as well, which I can't see in this paper. Thank you.
Well, first, thank you very much for your appreciation for Simon Parkes as well. Really appreciate it, and I will pass on appreciation to the team because they really do work incredibly hard. Some of them who are managing the announcements today were telling me about I asked about their weekends, and it clearly had been mainly kind of getting the material in place. So there's a lot of commitment there. You ask a really important and interesting question here, because I think we've all felt there is a significant shift, but it's in one can feel that there are some conflicting currents going on here. So I think first of all, actually to start with the defence and security piece, if we were writing this now, we would be putting quite a lot more in there, and I think it's the elapse of time that we are shifting quickly actually as the landscape is. Three things. Firstly, I think that there was perhaps still a bit of a residue of ESG funds not quite sure what they thought about security and defence. I think that that's beginning to shift, but actually there are some. We originally thought that it wasn't such a barrier to investment. I think we're now seeing examples where funds are finding it difficult to raise because it's almost a sort of legacy feature of those who are looking to invest that they are going to need to deal with. So we're looking at whether perhaps we could help in speeding up that process, so that for legacy reasons people are not being prevented from doing the kind of investment that is needed. We're also looking at we talked to the CBI Oliver Wyman, but really with government review, we can see some which reported a week ago, we can see some very interesting areas that we could potentially work with them. I was talking to them yesterday, so we're looking at potentially, and could there be some links to the pensions work that we do? I think that could be very powerful. And then both LM and CPR in different ways are putting together roundtables, talking to key people. That links then across to ESG. I suspect, like many, we've sensed, particularly on sustainability, there's been just a huge shift in the US, and whether that's in terms of companies' own policies or whether it's in terms of investment approaches, we're seeing a shift. That isn't necessarily the case elsewhere globally, and I think what we're going to need to do very carefully is first to monitor the not just sentiment but flows of capital. Are we seeing sort of less raising green bonds, for instance, or not? What's changing? Secondly, to think about language very carefully, because there are some instances where actually a slightly unfortunate turn of phrase can actually result in a very strong reaction, and I think we're seeing that in a lot of. I'm seeing it on in a lot of the organisations we're connected with. They're wanting to continue to do things around opportunity for all, but they're wanting to call it perhaps something a bit different to EDI as was done in the past, we're also looking at some other interesting areas. So impacting investment is an interesting one, because actually a lot of that is to do potentially with how you enhance life chances. And I think that there potentially could be a lot more that we could be doing in that area.
Thank you, Greg, and then Sir Nicholas.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report, which echo what my colleagues have said. It's mainly updating us on what's been done. So I got one question. What do you want us to do with this as a result of what you're telling us? Which leads on to the second question. There are events here that, various ones, members of the Court of Alderman would have various degrees of expertise. I haven't found, do you take any, it's an age-old question with the Court of Alderman. Do you have any policy or process of looking when things come up and say, well, Alderman X could bring something to this from their experience, I should contact them, or anything? I'm not aware of that happening. So that's the two questions. It's very nice to know about this, obviously, but what are your expectations that how we should react to it? And then secondly, my question on the process. Thanks.
So thank you very much for the question. In terms of what to do with it, this is perhaps not the most user-friendly of the ways that we explain what is happening in the corporation around financial and professional services. I would suggest that the document that is most useful is the annual review, because that's, if you're wanting to tell electors about what you're doing, if you're wanting to tell stakeholders, that would be the way of getting it across. That said, if people are really interested in the detail, this really provides the details. So it's a little bit horses for courses. If there's a sense of those you'd like to target, then let us know. And perhaps there is something a little bit more systematic we can do to help in terms of conveying what the corporation is doing around financial and professional services, because it's a lot and it's very impactful. In terms of being able to bring that expertise to bear, a lot of that happens through the leads, the member leads that we have in the specific areas. So if we're doing something around tech, if we're doing something around sustainable finance, we usually work with the member lead who bring in other members in order to make sure that the best of the best is brought to bear. And we've done that around visits overseas or around specific thematic issues.
Thank you, Sir Nicholas.
Thank you, and Damien. It's really terrific to see not only the traction that we're getting with government, but also the quality of the team that you've got and the work that they're doing. And it should not be underestimated the difficulty in convening the organizations that you are able to coalesce around the compact, the accord, the employers' pensions pledge. My question goes to some of the other agencies that are pushing their own priorities. So City UK is working on a 10-year strategy. They'll be trampling all over the sort of vision for economic growth, which is fine because they're all the right issues. CBI has got a lot more traction now. Rupert Soames and Rain have done a very good job in rehabilitating CBI. They're getting a lot of traction with government, and they're less focused on financial services, obviously, but they do nonetheless crisscross on our path. And CMIT, of course, has been going for 3 years now and is looking very much at the listed equity market and how we drive a campaign to increase domestic retail purchasing of UK shares. So, you know, as we think about that, we do need to figure out how we are differentiating ourselves. To my mind, the thing that really does differentiate us is the role of the Lord Mayor, because that's such a powerful symbol of bringing the city together. And we now have the expectation, really, that the Lord Mayor is going to be a voice that is listened to on all of the big financial issues of the day. And it's so important that everybody in this room who will follow Alistair will be able to continue that level of engagement and that level of profile, and particularly at a time when the government is looking for big ideas and really has a door wide open to the City of London. So my question for you really is, how are you thinking about how the City of London positions itself vis-a-vis CBI, City UK, CMIT, so that we continue to be the sort of primus inter pares, but that we're not vying for government attention too much? Because obviously, you know, if there are too many voices, government loses focus.
Great question, Damien. I'm just going to jump in because, as you know, Sir Nicholas, I'm on the board of City UK. And I think the collaborative nature, and I know Damien will confirm this, with City UK has never been better, on the basis that they aren't trying to run into each other. They talk to each other. Miles Chellick has really done an outstanding job, and I know Damien would agree with that. I can't speak for the other agency associations, but on City UK, we're very much aligned on where we're headed. So from my perspective, it's a good thing, and I'm sure Damien will confirm that. But Damien, I'll let you answer the rest of the question.
Thank you very, very much, and thanks, Nicholas, for a really important question, because the sense when you look at this big picture is that the challenges facing the UK and UK financial and professional services are so immense that actually any kind of duplication or preciousness in terms of tripping over each other, it's just an extravagance, a luxury that we can't afford. So it's one of my roles to work very hard with those chief execs. So I was talking to Miles yesterday, Hannah last week, and so on, to talk to those chief execs and make sure that we're very clear about what each of us is doing. I think we are in a position which is subtly but very importantly different. Firstly, that we are independent in a way that you know, simply the way that they raise money means that they are a little bit different. They probably have to be focusing on today's issues a lot more of the time. So we can be, that independence allows us to be more long term, and dare I say, to focus on follow through. And I think this is critical at a moment where we've just got a plethora of strategies. So we've got all of them really important, but you know, whether that's around strategic defence review, the industrial strategy, trade strategy, there'll be a skills strategy, there's economic growth around defence. All of them with important recommendations that need to be followed through. I think one of the key areas that we can focus on is to make sure that those key recommendations are being picked up and driven through. And that's certainly with the Compact and the Accord, there is always just that little danger that people will sign up, but will they follow up? We're absolutely on it year in, year out, looking to how you drive through success in those areas. I think the other thing that we can do is we can amplify what others are saying to make sure that it gets the cut through, but not in a way that confuses, because there are many voices in financial professional services that government is hearing. We can do a little bit of work to make sure that those that we are echoing each other rather than cutting across each other's messages.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Damien, thank you. I know you're going to hang around for a little bit longer than the private bit if there are other questions. Gemma.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 7 is a report of the Town Clerk for information detailing decisions taken under delegated authority or urgency powers. At item 8, I'm not aware in advance of any questions on matters relating to the work.
Martha, question.
Thank you. I've got a quick question, if I may. It's been brought to my attention by various livery people that there is a bit of distaste by them from receiving from sheriffs elect letters soliciting cash for their chains. Now, I know that's not unlawful, but there is very much a perception issue at the moment, to be gathering money in effect for an item of someone's wardrobe. Central governments have faced that very issue. So I've got a proposal that I'd like to put to this court, and maybe one for a future day to consider. It's whether, in effect, we should decide that we only need 3 chains, and therefore previous sheriffs, Lord Mayors, could give their chains over, hand them over, donate them. So we just reuse those, and then each future sheriff elect or Lord Mayor, if they want their badge, they sort of buy that themselves and hang it on those chains. So that's something I'd like to propose for this court to sort of really consider and take forward.
We certainly consider it. I know there's people have a choice of whether they want to contribute to the chain, and I think that's made absolutely clear. Peter Estlin will jump in, but I see no reason why we can propose that. We'll certainly have a discussion about it, but I think at the end of the day, there are many people, and just to counteract your argument, who were really keen to contribute to the Shrevell chain, and they have a choice. And if people didn't have a choice and were feeling forced, which I don't think they are, then we'll hear what you're saying. But I suspect we will also, that chain sometimes gets, certainly in my case, is given, or the badge is given back to their livery company, and that's made clear of what's going to happen to that afterwards. So that wouldn't be possible. And a lot of livery companies, as I'm sure you know, incredibly proud of having members of their company, whether they're non-aldermanic or aldermanic, as sheriff, and like to keep that memory going by having the chain after they step down from being sheriff or step down from the Court of Aldermen. But we can have a discussion, and Gemma will take note of that. Peter.
Well, Chairman, I was just going to add, I mean, practically 2 points on the chain. All of the chains of the senior aldermen get used at the same time along with the sheriff. So pragmatically, that would create an issue. Secondly, to William's point, I know chains have actually been passed down. I think Charles had the chain of John Stuttard, etc., etc. I think the third thing I would emphasise, and look, there may be a point of law here, Martha, which you're better sort of positioned to deal with. But frankly, nobody is forced to contribute. And to William's point, I'm donating my chain when I cease office, chain and badge, to a charity, and that was actually made clear up front. So, I'm not keeping it personally. I'm just using it whilst I'm in office, and that's it. So I think, look, the reality is the livery were actually probably the least of the supporters to my chain. It was mainly my colleagues in business. So you may be getting feedback, but I don't think it's unlawful. And secondly, it's a choice.
So just to come back on that, I made it very clear it's not unlawful and very much agree it is a choice. I'm just putting over what the perception issue is, and there is a contrary voice to that. And I think it'd be interesting to just have that debate, you know, on the agenda, a bit like our gowns. We've been debating about that and having some in stock and to reuse them and the like, whether that's possible. It's probably not one for today. But I'm just conscious that there is a perception issue at the moment, and I just need to handle that. And there may be more explanation required on that. But yes, I've personally declined to contribute to anyone's chain, and I know others will as well externally. But others will, of course, do that. For me, I just feel that if we're basically saying sometimes we don't have money and we're asking other people money for that, and that chain is, I get the donation that's sort of given onto another charity, but actually that's not sort of in effect sold by that charity to use that money. It's more sort of put on display. And I guess for me, it feels like there needs to be more of a social good to that attributed if there's going to be some thinking behind that. But I'm just thinking at the moment, you know, why are we asking people for money towards a piece of our item of clothing, in effect, our costume or attire, whatever you want to call it, when central government's been facing that very same issue quite recently. So I'm just bringing it to attention that there is a bit of a perception issue.
Thank you. Vincent.
I think if we were to discuss it, we probably should discuss this properly. But I just add one comment of my own, which is that looking back to 2018, when I sent those letters out as a sheriff-elect, I was extraordinarily touched by some of the letters I had from liverymen writing to me with sometimes very small donations. 5, 10, 15 pounds. In one case, I think my smallest donation was probably a £5 donation from someone, if I remember rightly, who could no longer come to events in the city, was because of age and ill health, wanted to make a very small personal donation to support my year as sheriff, and wrote a very touching letter to me wishing me well for the year. And I think for everyone who feels a slight degree of discomfort about that, I suspect across the livery there are probably dozens who feel in the camp of the person who wrote to me back in 2018 along those lines.
Thank you. We'll bring them back. Gemma.
Thank you, Chair. We move then to item 9 and any other business.
The only thing which we don't have to discuss now is the appointment, one vacancy in the room of Prem Goyle, and it's the Emmanuel Hospital Management Subcommittee, which Prem has served for 5 years. Prem is stepping down, so rather than make a decision now, can people ponder that, and so that we can make an appointment on that?
Chair, if I may jump in as well, we also have a similar situation in relation to the Samuel Wilson's Loan Trust, where we have 2 vacancies. We will need to appoint an additional alderman, as we're required to have 5 aldermen, and with Prem's resignation from that, we're all in a similar position.
So we'll follow them up for the next meeting. In the meantime, I mean, Gemma will send out exactly about the charities so that people can show their interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With that, we move to the exclusion of the public at item 10. Are those in the room happy to move the exclusion of the public, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. And with that, I'll thank those who've been viewing publicly and ask that the live stream be ended, please.